Are they really trying to make the connection that video games mean we need to increase safety programs? Really, Pennsylvania? Video games are dangerous and we need to offset their danger with educational programs? Wow. All right, and the last thing we want to talk about is the Pennsylvania tax on video games, or the Hawaii tax on adult entertainment. So these are interesting proposals that I'm not sure how lawmakers intend them to work. Pennsylvania is proposing, do we know what size tax it is and under what circumstances?
10%, and it was supposed to go to some education fund. I forgot which one.
Yeah,
10%.
But it's interesting because I don't see a like health and safety reason. So it's not like you have to tax cigarettes so that they can have health programs. It's not like you have to tax sugar, which we don't do in Pennsylvania that I know of, or gasoline for roads or something. If they wanted to implement a sales tax across the board, they certainly have the right to do that. But if you're going to say anyone who makes art in the form of a video game, which I'm sure maybe they don't consider art, but anybody who makes a video game, has to charge an additional, or anyone who sells a video game, I guess, has to charge an additional 10%. So I don't see how that would be legal under the First Amendment, how that's not a prior restraint on speech. They're discriminating against one particular kind of speech, video games.
Yeah. So it's in addition to applicable state and local taxes, a money collected will go to a newly created digital protection for school safety account used to enhance safety measures in Pennsylvania school districts.
Which have nothing to do with video games. Are they really trying to make the connection that video games mean we need to increase safety programs? Really, Pennsylvania? Video games are dangerous and we need to offset their danger with educational programs? Wow. Somebody in Pennsylvania doesn't realize that when you give people an outlet for their aggressions, an outlet for their thoughts, when you let them read fanciful books and things like that, they are able to explore those ideas in a safe way. Books don't encourage people to go become murderers. Video games don't encourage people to go become murderers. Listening to a radio show doesn't encourage somebody to become a murderer. No, it's neglecting people's health and lifestyle. Like even just, I'm talking about like a very basic lifestyle. Subjecting people to discrimination, marginalizing them. That's what makes people want to commit crimes, Pennsylvania. Ugh. I hate this whole video games violent thing crap. I thought it was just a tax, not a connection between video games and violence. Wow.
And there's such a wide variety of games out there. Like, yes, there are some that are going to be shooting games or are going to involve, team against team.
Yeah.
But I mean, what about something like, like Katamari or like Dr. Mario or so many of these games that are just, either puzzle solving or about reflexes or just collecting.
They improve spatial acuity, they improve mathematics performance, and they improve driving performance, like literally your reaction time for things. Laparoscopic surgeons are known to have a much lower error rate when they video game in general. Even just playing Sonic the Hedgehog was the one study that I saw was enough to help laparoscopic surgeons and the eye-hand coordination that they need for doing surgery in the dark, basically, because their instruments are inside you, but you're not cut open beyond the size it needs to get these tiny instruments into you. So the surgeon doesn't have like a bird's eye view into you. The surgeon is using a little camera on the end of a stick, basically. Very expensive stick.
Kerrigan is saying that it's only proposed on M17 Plus and AO rating ones.
Oh, great. So that's even more of a prior restraint on speech. So it's only if you want to speak about these particular topics, mature topics, that you get a special tax. So how is that connected in any way to video game violence then for children? Are we kidding?
Yeah, they're already 18 plus. The kids aren't in school. Those people aren't in school.
Yeah, or parents are buying the games, not necessarily illegally, but against the regulation.
You can't make that assumption when you're making a tax.
Yeah, so it's a prior restraint, in my humble opinion.
Yeah,
and so would the thing in Hawaii. Do we know what the thing in Hawaii is?
I have a big problem with this.
So then, House Bill 109 is only 3 pages long. An act relating to tax reform and state taxation by codifying and enumerating certain subjects on taxation. Wow, they use the flourishing language even worse than the lawyers do. Providing for tax credits in certain cases, conferring powers, etc. An account is a digital protection for school safety account. Adults only rating is 18 years or older. The board is the Entertainment Software Rating Board. The department is the Department of Revenue of Pennsylvania. Mature rating is 17 years or older. Video game is an electronic game that involves interaction with a user interface to generate visual feedback on a video device. Oh, well, isn't that an overly broad description? A video game is any electronic game that involves interaction with a user interface to generate visual feedback on a video device. Oh, well, I guess it's going to come down to what your definition of electronic game is then, because any user interface that generates visual feedback on a video device is basically what people do for 17 hours of the day now. The term does not include a game that contains obscene material or performances as defined as sexual materials, so it's not related to pornographic games, believe it or not, or games designed primarily for private purposes, political purposes, industrial purposes, corporate purposes, or institutional purposes.
Wait, aren't most video games designed for people to use in private?
Yes, game designed primarily for private. What kind of game would you possibly be buying then? A game to be played in public? I mean, even if you're playing an online game, you're not buying it for public purposes, you're buying it for private purposes. So this is just weird. An electronic game that involves a user interface and feedback on a video device, but that is not primarily designed for private, political, industrial, corporate, or institutional purposes. The term does not include a game that contains obscene material or a game designed primarily for private, political, industrial, corporate, or institutional purposes. Now, that's so vague as to nearly be unconstitutional by itself. What is it that they're trying to tax here then? This doesn't even say it. They've effectively eliminated all the proper things that could be taxed with this.
See, the loophole. So say they have stated in something else they specifically want to target publicly played tournament games like PUBG and Fortnite. Although Fortnite wouldn't count because it doesn't have an M17. PUBG, I don't think, has an M17 rating.
Yeah, but this is a tax on the separate sale of a retail video game. So you're going to host a PUBG tournament, so you're buying 10 copies of PUBG so you can have, or I don't even know, you can't even have 5v5. You're going to buy 100 copies of PUBG for your 100 people to play PUBG. So they're going to charge 10% tax on 100 copies of PUBG, and that's what this is all about?
But wouldn't PUBG just need to stick a pair of tits in there somewhere and then it has obscene material and this law doesn't apply?
Yeah, that's also weird. So it doesn't apply to pornography. It doesn't apply to your private video games or ones developed for political, industrial, corporate, or institutional purposes. I don't know what those are. Has anyone out there ever had their company develop a video game for internal use for themselves? That'd be so cool. I want to work for that company. Well, after I hear about what kind of game they made. But wow.
This is weird, yeah.
Yeah, this is absolutely weird. So the tax is imposed at the separate sale at retail of video games that have an adults-only rating or mature rating according to the ESRB. The tax imposed shall be 10% and remitted as follows. And the Digital Protection for School Safety account is established as a restricted revenue account within the general fund. Money in the account is appropriated to the department on a continuing basis for the purpose of enhancing school safety measures implemented by school districts as provided by laws. So they're taxing non-private, non-obscene adult video games targeted at adults or 17 plus to establish a school safety account. This makes absolutely no sense to me. What in the world the proponent of this bill is trying to do. Introduced by Quinn, Hill, Evans, and Nielsen. I want to find out who Quinn, Hill, Evans, and Nielsen are. Obviously, they're my state legislators because they have absolutely no idea what the heck a video game is. Jeez. Well,
I want to get on my Matchbox for a second. Okay.
Soapbox?
Soapbox. That's the one. So I used to work at Target, so I have a little bit of experience with this.
You're already tall enough. You just need a matchbox, not a soapbox. I'm kidding.
Really tall, yeah.
You used to work at Target.
Yes. So I used to work for Target. Illinois has regulations on video games that are or let's say for a second that they are intending to tax all games sold at all retail stores, even for private use. Let's assume that that's what the intention is. Obviously, the wording is really weird. But in Illinois, there is a regulation, there is a law in place where M-rated games or A-rated games have to have ID shown for to buy them. You have to show it's usually, obviously, they card if they think you're under 18. But at Target, I had to scan an ID every time I sold a game that was M or A.
Okay.
So I didn't have the option to not check the ID. That's the way Target does it. You know how like small stores that sell alcohol, we have that card here. Maybe
they wouldn't accept my county ID when I forgot my driver's license, even though my county ID is actually a government ID, and I was in the county that it was issued.
Yeah, so like a small mom and pop store will just check it and be good, but Target requires you to have your state ID on you, and they have to scan it, or they literally cannot sell the item. No manager approval will ever get it passed. You have to scan the ID. So if you're already regulating it by saying you have to be 18 to buy this game, how then can you also tax it and give the money to children who are under 18 for safety training?
Yeah, so the state's tax and spend powers are pretty broad, but there usually has to be some connection between what they're taxing and spending it on. And so this seems to be a very tenuous connection, which seems to touch on video game violence, school safety. We're gonna tax we're gonna tax mature video games, which are obviously the more violent video games, or at least have the potential to be. Or should we say that the more violent video games would have the more mature rating? You know, rectangle is not a square, but a square is a rectangle. So they are really just trying to get a tax on violent video games to pay for school safety programs. I don't think there's a connection between the two. And I think they're trying to not say, oh, we think that video games lead to school violence, but that seems to be the connection here. I don't like it one little bit. Anything else?
I'm just upset.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. That is our show. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. This is a community-supported channel. Your money helps us pay for the expenses of the channel. Brandon is now being paid as our editor. Tactical is being paid as our researcher. None of us are making $1 million off of this. We are just using it to offset our expenses, the time that we spend on the show. When I'm busy, Brandon can do all the editing. When I'm not busy, Brandon can do all the editing, and I'll just check it then. And it's great. This is an organization that is growing, and if I have my way, very shortly here, I'll be hiring our tax accountant to start structuring this whole thing in a more 501c3 friendly way, and we'll see if we can't get approved for 501c3. So thank you to all of our supporters in February, especially John Doe, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, Verement, Tayne, Michael Pearce, Terry Crisp, Richard Fournier, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Daniel Perez, and Jacob Papenfuss. You are all supporting us at the $50 level, and I am very grateful for your support. Thank you very much to the $5 plus supporters who are scrolling on the LED panel behind me, and Brandon will add you during the crawl. I am off to pack for Scotland. I'm going to go visit my dogs for one last time. They're with my parents before I go visit for a week, and of course I'll see everybody when I get back too. But I'll shoot some video of the dogs and see if we can't have some of that included in the videos that drop as well. So, love you all. Have a great week. I'll see you in the stories. Don't forget you can join our Discord channel if you want to have interactive discussions in various topics, including those of law, things we talk about on the channel, and off topics. Don't forget that you can tag me on Discord and add stories to our stories bin through Discord as well. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week from Scotland. Love you all. I am Leonard French, and I'll see you next week.